I'm actually at the point where I'm bored of this striker stuff. I'm bored of the conflicting reports. I'm bored of the way the pendulum swings from Gyokeres to Sesko and back again. The reality is we don't have a clue what's going on. And I promise I'm going to do my utmost to try and stay grounded when it comes to whoever it is that Arsenal plan to bring in that role this summer. We're going to talk Madueke, Mosquera. We're going to talk Akliouche. We're going to talk Rodrygo. And we'll get into that Gyokeres stuff on this live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody, how are we doing? Happy Wednesday and welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. I said yesterday on Latte Firm with FK, brilliant show. Go over, check it out, subscribe. That I wouldn't mind it just cooling down a little bit. I didn't ask for this, though. Cloud, rain, wind. That's the British summer over, isn't it? On the 2nd of July. Certainly feels that way anyway. But we got lots and lots of Arsenal stuff to talk through today, as we always seem to have at this moment in time. The transfer window is in full swing. A lot of people were looking at the kind of 1st of July and saying, well, that's when our window is really going to get going and really going to begin. And we've had one announcement so far. And it looks like, at least from what we can gauge from the outside looking in, that there's plenty of work going on in the background to try and secure some more signings. Who those signings are, we'll get into them. Whether they're the right signings is another debate and discussion that we can have on today's pod. And I'm going to have a little bit of a moan about some of the conflicting reporting with regards to some of the players that we believe to be primary targets for Arsenal. So lots and lots to get into. Let's not waste any more time and let's start with our first story. Okay, let's start off by talking Noni Madueke. Now, according to some of the reports we read yesterday, Arsenal had made an offer to Noni Madueke, but they hadn't gone as far as contacting Chelsea to hold a discussion over what the player would cost, etc., etc. Now, my understanding of this situation is that Noni Madueke is one of a number of options that Arsenal are looking at. This isn't advanced. This isn't in a place where we're ready to press the go button. We're not in a place where we're ready to pull the trigger. This is just an interest that exists and that has existed for quite some time. Noni Madueke obviously impressed people during his time at PSV Eindhoven, came to Chelsea, has shown some flashes of what he can do and what he's capable of. But at Chelsea, it's very, very difficult, isn't it? There's so many players. It's such a big squad, players of a similar age profile. And they're almost, I think, competing against each other to the point where it's to the detriment of their development. And I feel like Noni Madueke is probably a victim of that. Having said that, I don't think we should be, as a football club, thinking about signing Noni Madueke. I don't think he would improve us enough. I don't think he would be satisfied at this stage in his career with either playing second fiddle to Bukayo Saka, because we know that he prefers to operate from the right-hand side, or being a part of a rotational group on the left that involves Martinelli and Trossard, who are both, by the looks of it, staying. And you know, my question would always be, well, is Madueke better than those two? I think he's probably about the same level. I don't see him as more effective or more useful than Martinelli. I know Martinelli's had his ups and downs and probably will continue to have his ups and downs and show that inconsistency that unfortunately has seen him not regress, but just stagnate a little bit in terms of his progress. So, you know, Madueke doesn't do it for me. He doesn't move the needle. I've said it already. I think that if you go and get your striker and then you bring in Ebere Eze on top of that, and then you sign Noni Madueke as a third attacking signing, then I think people might be more tolerant of the idea and more open-minded to it. I think there's a few things. There's the ex-Chelsea player tax, which, you know, creates a PTSD among certain Arsenal supporters because we've been burnt by that a fair few times. I mean, Kai Havertz, I think, has worked out quite well, but there are other examples where it's not worked well and people are looking at Chelsea and going, well, they're not where we want to be. Why are we going and plucking players out of Chelsea? I think there are examples where it can work. I'm not sure that Noni Madueke falls into that category. And I certainly don't think that he'd be worth paying big money for. And make no mistake about it, Chelsea have got so much headroom with the PSR stuff. They're not in a position where they're desperate to sell right now. Now that sounds wild because they keep going out and buying players, 50 million here, 50 million there, but they sell really well. They're really clever in the way that they do their accounting. They're really clever with the long contracts, the amortization stuff, all of that, etc., etc. They brought through some players in the last few years as well. They sold big to Saudi a couple of windows ago that really kind of helped them ease those PSR concerns and issues. Chelsea are not desperate to sell. So if you're going to go and get a player from Chelsea, you're going to pay top dollar given the nature of our rivalry. Noni Madueke is not worth that for me. And so I would steer clear of this personally. But the reason I bring it up again is because these reports, they are not going away. They keep resurfacing, which suggests that, the interest is probably genuine. Whether it's an interest that I would hold personally if I were running the ship, it's not. Whether I would feel it's worth the investment, nope, I wouldn't. But Arsenal are at the very, very least looking at this. I don't think that we're at an advanced stage with it. As I said, my understanding is that he's just one of a number of players that they're looking at. And we keep talking about Andrea Berta's approach, going out there, speaking to multiple candidates for each position. And that is going to create situations like this, where you're going to hear of a player being linked that Arsenal might have put the feelers out on, but maybe have no intention to progress forward with in terms of trying to agree a move. So hold tight on this one. Don't lose your head over it because it's not at the point of sort of execution at the moment in terms of us executing the deal. So no need to stress just yet, but I don't think this would be a wise bit of business. And I don't think it would go down very well with the fans. And I'm not saying that as a football club, your transfer business should be based around the wants and desires of the fans, because a lot of the time we're overly emotional, we're overreactionary. That tribalism that exists within us as Arsenal fans means that we're less open-minded to players from rival clubs or with a past that involves a rival club, etc., etc. I'm not saying the club should go by what we want, but yeah, I just don't think from a football perspective this makes enough sense for us to make a significant investment. Arsenal continue to be linked with a move for Valencia defender Cristhian Mosquera. What is going on with that? I hear you ask. Well, the latest is that Valencia have put a contract offer on the table in front of Cristhian Mosquera. They are hoping to keep a hold of him, but by all accounts, based on everything we're reading, if Arsenal get to around about the 20 million euro mark, Valencia will find it very, very difficult to say no, as the player is keen to make the move to Arsenal as well. So, yeah, it feels like we're in a good place with that one, and it won't be too long before we end up getting that deal over the line. So, confident and hopeful that that one will go through sooner rather than later. Another player's name that came to my attention yesterday is Maghnes Akliouche, who is a player playing currently for Monaco over in France. Let me just bring up his player profile so I can show you some of the numbers. In fact, I'll just read them to you. It's easier. 23-year-old French Algerian. Contract expires at Monaco in 2028. He recently, not that long ago, extended it about a year ago. But Akliouche is someone that is said to be a really big and exciting talent. He plays from the right wing. He is a left-footed player that likes to cut inside, and his market value on Transfermarkt is around about 45 million euros. So that says a fair bit about how highly he's rated. He's got 16 goals and 17 assists in 96 appearances for Monaco. So he's a player that can certainly impact the game in the final third. And he's been talked about quite a bit as one of the young, exciting prospects in French football. And we often find, don't we, that French football is a hotbed of talent. At 23 years old, has he kicked on enough for me to say, yep, you've really got to go and get him, given that, his name's been on the lips of people for a while. I'm not sure, but I understand where the said admiration comes from. He's great to watch, aesthetically, really pleasing footballer. Not sure there's a great deal in this, but it was reported by L'Equipe, obviously a very well-known French outlet, and it was reported alongside some Viktor Gyökeres chat, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But Maghnes Akliouche, just a name maybe to keep an eye on. over the coming weeks. We'll see. Okay, let's talk Rodrygo. What's the latest with him? Rodrygo. Arsenal's dream signing, the guy we've been hearing about for months and months and months. Still no update with regards to whether or not he'll be leaving Real Madrid. However, something interesting from last night is that he was left out of the team that played in the Club World Cup against Juventus. And this has been quite the theme of this Club World Cup. Rodrygo being left out of the starting 11 and not really getting a look in under new coach Xabi Alonso. Now, many felt that when Xabi Alonso came in, it could be a kind of a springboard for Rodrygo, who I'm not saying had dropped off at Real Madrid in terms of his performance levels, but who was starting to be talked about as someone that was probably dispensable to the team, someone that, they'd be willing to move on if the price was right. I kept saying earlier on in the summer that I think that for Rodrygo to give up on his Real Madrid dream is quite a big thing, and he'd have to have it or be very clear in his own mind that actually he doesn't really have a future there, and that it's not the place for him anymore, to then force a move, which then I think brings Real Madrid to the table and allows any potential suitor to negotiate a decent price for him. Rodrygo being left out of these games, I don't know if I read into it as much as everybody else does, but it is interesting. And every time that happens, those rumors and reports linking him to Arsenal are going to intensify. Ben Jacobs has come out and said that he remains the priority in terms of that wide position, or the dream target is the way everybody keeps putting it. But if you don't get any indication that A, he wants to leave, and B, that Real Madrid would be willing to negotiate, then it's all a load of nonsense, really. I mean, the dream target at centre forward is Alexander Isak, but we stand right now zero chance of achieving that. So I don't really read into those reports too much. But if you are a believer in the idea of Rodrygo pushing and getting out of Real Madrid and coming along to North London, then this would have probably given you a little bit of encouragement. Now, there is some reports coming out of Spain claiming that he is scheduled to sit down with Real Madrid and hold talks over his future after the Club World Cup. So we're going to have to wait at least until after the Club World Cup to get an indication as to whether or not Rodrygo would be available. Real are said to want something like 85 to 90 million euros. Big money. But, if he was to become available, I'd be really interested to see whether Arsenal would seriously enter the conversation and enter the room, because, for all the stick that we give them and all the criticism that they've had so far this summer for not just, in some people's eyes, paying the money and getting their transfer targets in straight away, they have shown in the past that when the right player is available and they're really wedded to the idea of that player, they will go and break the bank to do it. They did it with Declan Rice. You could argue they overpaid for Kai Havertz because they really believed he'd be an asset to the team. At the time, they probably overpaid for Ben White, 50 million quid. Aaron Ramsdale, they probably overpaid for him at that point as well. So I guess my point here is that I think Arsenal have shown us that if they really like a player, if they really believe in a player, they're willing to break the bank and push the boat out to try and get them in. But that might be dependent, their ability to do that, on what they're paying for a Sesko or a Gyokeres. And, obviously they've brought Zubimendi in and they're trying to wrap up Mosquera, and they've done Norgard and they've done Kepa. It's all linked. So, you're going to have to wait on this one. And listen, again, when we did our transfer rumors rating, probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now, likelihood of this happening, I put it at a 4 out of 10. And nothing has changed. Maybe I'll push it up to a 5 out of 10 because he's been left out of all these Club World Cup games at a push, but I still don't see it as likely at this moment in time. So that's my stance on the whole Rodrygo thing. Right, let's take a short pause, and when we come back, we'll cover our main story, which is Viktor Gyökeres, and we will take lots and lots of your questions from the live chat. Why? Because I've whizzed through today's stories, and we need to make sure you give you guys your money's worth. Right, let's do that after this.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
You heard the man. Like and subscribe. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Leave those likes. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It really, really does help. And if you're an audio listener, whether that be on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review because all of that stuff really, really does help. Okay, let's talk Viktor Gyökeres. I'm going to have a bit of a rant about this. I'm sorry in advance. I apologize. I'm just getting so fed up of this striker chat. And when it comes to your club going out there to bring in what is the most glamorous position in football, a player to come in and play the most glamorous position in football, centre forward, goal scorer, all the rest of it, you should be excited. And let me be clear, right? I don't blame Arsenal for this. I don't blame the fans for this. But I blame the football culture that we live in right now for this, because we've got to this point where everybody wants like a minute by minute update. You know, people are clutching on to any tiny little tidbit of information that comes out. It feels like some people in the space of journalism even are more interested in beating everybody else to the punch than actually reporting with accuracy. I've had sympathy for journalists in the past and reporters in the past, because I've said, look, sometimes you're only as good as your source. And if your source that has given you something great in the past gives you a bit of information and you trust in that source and you go out and report it and it doesn't materialize, then people look at you and they go, well, he was wrong. You know, he was wrong. He got it completely wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And they discredit you. So it's a very, very difficult world to navigate. It really, really is. In that sense, I've got some sympathy. But last night, right, I went upstairs to put my kids to bed. And while I was waiting for them to fall asleep, I scrolled through social media and I read an account from Sasha Tavalieri, who said, Arsenal are in advanced talks with Viktor Gyökeres, making everybody think that, yeah, we're getting Gyokeres. That's it. We're moving forward. We're finally going to get that striker in. And a few hours later, when I next checked my phone, there was reports from Fabrizio Romano, some of the outlets in Portugal saying, hold on a minute. No, nothing has happened. Nothing has changed. No progress has been made. No club to club talks have happened. And I just sat there and I thought, this is crazy. Like, you wonder why fans nowadays are so knee-jerk and are so emotional and at times, myself included, over the top. Well, that's why. Because when you care deeply for a football club and you desperately want to see your side go out and get that striker, as we all do, you just go, come on, come on, come on. And you latch onto every report and you jump on the bandwagon of all these things and the Sesko Gyokeres thing. I mean, the pendulum with regards to who the priority is has swung so many times over the last few weeks. It's crazy. As fans, we try our best, man. We really, really try our best not to get caught up in this whirlwind of transfer rumors. But it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult indeed. I knew when I said that I didn't blame the club, I was going to get some stick in the live chat for this. And here we go. Rumble says, to take the blame away from the club is delusional, Harry. How many transfers have Arsenal done that have taken months to do? Hold on a minute. Arsenal are negotiating in the background with a number of players. We're hearing little bits of information here and there. We've heard a few names. There's a few names floating around. That's all we know. Okay. One thing I'll give Arsenal immense credit for this summer is that, yes, there's a lot of names being linked. And yes, there are a lot of reports going around. But there's never really that much detail in any of these reports. You can get wind of a bit of interest as a journalist if you do your homework and you do your research, but nobody has a real idea and a real clue of exactly what the ins and outs are of some of these potential deals and exactly what stage they are at. Nobody knows. If they did, you'd have much clearer reporting and reporting that isn't all wishy-washy, that actually says something without saying a great deal. That's what we're dealing with this summer. That's not Arsenal. Arsenal are not going out and briefing people on things like, we like Noni Madueke. That's been got from someone else. One journalist is telling you that Arsenal have got an interest in the player, but haven't made any offer to the player or to Chelsea Football Club. Another journalist is telling you that they've made an offer to the player, but not the football club. And another journalist is telling you they've made no offers to anybody in the Noni Madueke camp or to Chelsea Football Club. So what do you believe? The fact that there's so much conflicting reporting means that Arsenal have done a very good job, by the way, of keeping things quiet in terms of the detail. You can't keep the interest always completely radio silent, because people are going to pick that up through different sources, through agents, people close to the players, etc., etc. And agents do a lot more briefing than anybody else. So, you're going to hear of the names, you're going to hear of the rumors, but the fact that we've got no detail around any of these, or we've got so many conflicting reports, says that Arsenal are doing actually a good job of keeping it all very, very, very quiet. And so why am I going to blame Arsenal? Arsenal didn't go out and tell people last night that Viktor Gyökeres is the one and we're in advanced talks. That came from Sasha Tavolieri. I can almost guarantee you that he didn't get that from the Arsenal end of things. That's where you gotta kind of be able to detach from it a little bit, but also look at the fact that the very little detail we have, it tells you that it's not coming from us. It's not. If Arsenal wanted to brief someone, right, they would go and brief them, and they'd give them something to make that story credible. If it was a story that they really wanted to be out there, I don't think that this is something that you're going to blame Arsenal for. If you want to criticize Arsenal for being a little bit slow, if you want to criticize Arsenal for having got to July without bringing in one of those strikers that we've been talking about for such a long time, fair play. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. But if you're going to sit there and say that Arsenal are to blame for the conflicting reporting, or Arsenal are to blame for the the sort of inaccuracies and the lack of detail in some of the stories, then that's just a nonsense. Anyway, let's move on. My rant is over. I'm just, as I say, look, I'm getting frustrated with it. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to sort of stay calm and relaxed. And when we get that striker in, it puts to bed all this nonsense speculation and rubbish, doesn't it? And that's ultimately what we want, because it's really draining. Well, you wake up one day and it's Sesko. You wake up the next and it's Gyokeres. And before you've even gone to bed, it's swung back to the other one. And the irony is, can you imagine we don't even sign any of them? I don't know. Anyway, look, let's take some of your thoughts and questions from the live chat. Jason says, is it me, or has this transfer window been the first window that all of Arsenal's targets are public, where normally we don't find out anything until a bid is made? Well, listen, we're operating under a different sporting director who takes a different approach, clearly. And when you've got a new sporting director, there's probably different sources around that sporting director that you can tap into if you're a journalist. And also, if we're dealing with players like Gyokeres and Sesko, both of which who will be keen to make a step up at this stage, we've got to deal with the fact that their agents are going to be out there briefing the shit out of these stories to put their player in the public eye, to put their player in the shop window, to try and move things along. And so, yeah, it's a little bit different in terms of, we know of a lot of names at the moment, and that kind of aligns with what we're hearing about Andrea Berta's approach, whereby he goes and speaks to loads of different players. But yeah, I mean, you're right to make the point that we're hearing a lot of names this summer. How many of them are going to actually materialize into done deals, though? Probably not a lot of them. Zubimendi we knew about from a while ago, and obviously that's happened. Kepa, we got wind of a few weeks back, and obviously we've completed that. Norgard, I'm imagining that one will be completed this week. And then with the wingers and the strikers, it's just all very kind of wishy-washy, isn't it, in terms of the detail? In fact, there isn't much detail, and nobody knows what the deal is. This is a classic example. Rumble. Whose fault is it that Zubimendi hasn't signed yet? Zubimendi signed ages ago, mate. He signed months ago. He agreed to join Arsenal months ago. We were told that the deal would not be ratified until we got into July, because that's what works for Real Sociedad from a financial point of view. We wanted to pay for Zubimendi in installments. Real Sociedad accepted that. Okay, we're paying a little bit more than the release clause, but they've agreed to us paying in installments. There has to be a little bit of give and take in negotiations. We've probably said that's fine. Let's do the deal in July. It is the 2nd of July today, my friend. And if we get a Zubimendi announcement later today, I'm not saying we will because I don't know that, but if we do get a Zubimendi announcement today, tomorrow, or the day after, are you still going to be saying, well, whose fault is it that we didn't say? Who cares? As long as we get the deal done. As long as we get the deal done. I'm a real gunner says, agents start rumors to line their pockets and players' pockets. Absolutely. And from knowing some of the people that work at Arsenal and from having conversations with them and from being involved in the media group, if you like, that covers Arsenal over the course of a season, I know that so much of this stuff that we're reading will not be coming from Arsenal. It just will not. So, people can say that Arsenal feed out certain stories, and I'm sure they do in certain situations, but they're not going to feed out transfer speculation because that just adds more pressure on them. That winds people up. They want their PR to be good. They don't want everybody sitting there every day up in arms, frustrated, upset, arguing, shouting the odds about what Arsenal have or haven't done. Transfer speculation does not come from the buying club more often than not. And sorry, but people have to wake up to that. Unless you're in a situation where you're trying to unsettle someone. And I don't think we're in that situation. I don't think we need to be there. What have we got in the live chat? Let's scroll through and pick out a few more bits. Paul James says, we aren't fed news. We're given rumors, speculation, and guesses. Based on that, people get heated up, abusive, and angry. We aren't getting facts, but we treat everything like it's gospel. Get a grip. That's a great way of putting it. Aguna Matata's talking absolute crap in the comments. See you later, mate. I don't even understand what you're saying. You can't even put a sentence together. Let's Odradek says, Harry, do you honestly think Rodrygo is better than Martinelli? Yeah, I do. Listen, I like Martinelli, and I don't want to lose Gabriel Martinelli. I think he's a valuable asset to the squad, but I think for us to level up, we do need to go out and bring in a winger that's more productive in that final third. I think with Gabriel Martinelli, we get hot and cold. We don't know what we're going to get from week to week. No, never question his work rate, fitness, running power, energy, commitment to the cause. I'd never question any of that. But I do think sometimes the decision making in the final third is not at the level it needs to be, and sometimes I don't think we get the maximum out of him in terms of outputs either. Antonio Banks says, Harry, do you see Sasha Tavalieri as a reliable source? I think in the past he's got a few things right, and I've enjoyed some of his reporting in the past, but like everyone, he's not going to get everything right. There's going to be some situations he reports on or sort of suggests are heading in one direction that end up going in another. When I'm having a little rant about this conflicting reporting stuff, I'm not digging out individuals, right? It's their job. I get it. I understand it. I know what the game is, right? I know what they're trying to do. I know what they have to do. But I just think that, you look pretty silly when you come out with something really kind of strongly and hours later, some other high profile journalists come out and essentially rubbish your reports. Now, if it turns out that we do make progress in the coming days with Viktor Gyökeres and we end up signing him, everybody's going to turn around and apologize to Sasha Tavalieri. And then the likes of Fabrizio Romano, for example, who reported the opposite, are going to get the backlash and the heat, and people are going to start to think about them and their credibility and all the rest of it. You're only as good as your sources. I keep saying that. I'll say it again. But for me, it's just becoming all a little bit frustrating. It is. Let's run through the chat and pick up a few more. Ian says, are you happy to see 100 million of talent in Partey, Jorginho and Tierney go for free? PSR, anyone? Really? 100 million worth of talent? No, come on. Jorginho wouldn't have been sold for, even if he had 5 years on his contract, you wouldn't have got more than 15 million at max, I don't think, for Jorginho. Kieran Tierney's been injured for 3 out of the last 4 seasons, pretty much. And you probably wouldn't have got more than 15, 20 million for him. And Thomas Partey, what are you saying that he would make up 60, 70 million pounds in terms of a transfer fee with his history of injuries? And no, come on. It's not 100 million pounds worth of talent. If you're talking about what we paid for them, is that where you're going with it? Is it that we paid 50 odd million for Partey, we paid 10 million for Jorginho, and whatever we paid for Tierney? If that's the lens through which you're looking at it, assets depreciate in value in football. That's how it works. You bring in a player at 25 years old, of course, his value is not going to be the same when he gets to 32, 33 years old, which is the case with like Partey and Jorginho. So I'm not sure I buy that. I'm not sure I buy that. Theo says, Harry, is it a possibility that maybe, just maybe, the management are actually trying to sign a striker that we don't even know of? It is a possibility, and it would be hilarious if that's what happened. And I'll tell you why. Because it would prove the point that I've just been making, which is that when it comes to the detail and it comes to the ins and outs, nobody knows what Arsenal are doing right now. Arsenal are on course to sign a number of players this summer and are holding multiple discussions and conversations. And people are getting wind of those conversations and of those discussions and of what Arsenal's preferences are and going quite big on the reporting. But the truth is, there'll be a lot of these names that you'll hear of and that will fade away. There'll be a lot of names that you hear discussed that have at this stage zero chance of becoming Arsenal players. You've got to be aware of the fact that we're dealing in rumors right now and not much more. You know, we were told or we were hearing based on these reports for ages that Benjamin Sesko was the striker that we're going to sign, and that Arsenal had pretty much agreed it all with RB Leipzig, and come this summer it was going to be a pretty easy and straightforward deal to do. Think about it, right? Apart from hearing about what RB Leipzig would like to achieve in terms of the player's sale price, which has probably come from RB Leipzig or from the player's agent, apart from hearing that, what other detail have we had at any stage in this window about Benjamin Sesko? Nothing whatsoever. We've got no idea what a wage would look like for him. We've got no idea on whether there's a deadlock between the two clubs or whether it's Benjamin Sesko wanting more. We've heard all of it, right? And that it can't be all of those things, right? It can't be that the price point is too far away for us with regards to what they want versus where we're at, and that he wants a release clause, and that he wants a crazy contract, and that we're looking at Viktor Gyökeres at the same time. Like, you're hearing loads. The truth is, most of it's probably guesswork and not based on very much evidence at all. Now, again, I'll make this point again because people think I'm sitting here and defending every single thing that Arsenal do. I am frustrated and disappointed that we haven't wrapped up a striker signing yet. I'm not at panic mode yet because it's the 2nd of July. So I'm not going to completely lose my head over that. But I do sympathize with those who look at it and go, we should have done this by now. I get that point of view. I sympathize with it. I understand it. I appreciate it. But equally, right, we don't know what is going on here. And if we did, then the reporting would be consistent, wouldn't it? Because Arsenal, I'm sure, are pushing in the direction of one or the other first and foremost. One of those two strikers will be the priority to Arsenal, if not somebody completely different, in answer to Theo's question. The point I'm trying to make is that Arsenal will know internally what they want to do, who they want to get. The fact that we don't know doesn't speak to the fact that Arsenal don't know. It speaks to the fact that the reporting is not quite where it could be in terms of its accuracy. And that's not to have a go at any individuals, but it's all very wishy-washy. It's all very, very unclear. So yeah, let's see. Guys, don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. There is over 650 of you with us live right now, which is incredible. Thank you so much for your amazing support of the channel. I really do appreciate it. We hit 42k subs on YouTube yesterday, so let's keep pushing. Let's try and get to that 45k mark as soon as we possibly can. Your support is very much needed for that. Like, subscribe, all the rest of it. I'm going to take a really brief pause, and then we will continue to take some of your questions and your thoughts from the live chat box. But before we do that, I'm going to play you guys a very short clip from our latest Patreon scouting video where we covered Cristhian Mosquera. I'm recording another one of these today, and it'll probably be out with you tomorrow. So now's a good time to sign up and become a patron, should you so wish. We have got scouting videos out at the moment on Viktor Gyökeres, on Benjamin Sesko, on Martin Zubimendi, and on Cristhian Mosquera. We've got Eze, we've got Mosquera to come. Yeah, now's as good a time as any to become a Chronicles of a Gooner patron. Here's a clip from the latest one, which was a look at Cristhian Mosquera, to give you an idea of the content we're making over on Patreon. The link to sign up is in the description. If you're interested, let's have a little peek at what we did with regards to the day. For someone like Cristhian Mosquera, this is what I'm more interested in. You know, what can he do moving forward? I know he can defend. I know he can destroy. I know he can break up play. But in our case, we're going to be in a lot of situations where we're trying to break opposition down and not vice versa. And so, yes, you know, hopefully he can help us be a little bit more transition resistant. We tend to face transitional teams nowadays. And if he can do that, that'll be great. But I think for me, the big question mark is, what can he give us going forward? And here you're seeing him bite back, prevent danger. We're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing him win the ball here high up and then laying it off to the likes of Brian and Mbumo, who's also on his way out of Brentford, by the way. I fear for them, I have to say, losing him, losing Norgard, and having already lost Thomas Frank as well. Here he is picking the pocket and then just helping it into the path of a Danish teammate. Here again, look, he watches the run from outside to in, just anticipates and picks his moment as to when to kind of bite. There you go. That just gives you an idea of the type of content we're making over on Patreon. So you can sign up if you wish via the link in the description below. Okay, shall we continue taking some of your questions and thoughts from the live chat? Guitar Solo says, why do you understand the views of frustrated people? Is the goal to ultimately get a striker, or for us to get a striker within the timelines of uninformed fans? Well, the goal is ultimately to get a striker. But you can't begrudge people for feeling a little bit anxious about the fact that we haven't achieved that yet. And previous history, recent history, in fact, tells us that Arsenal can drop the ball in this department. And some would argue back and say, well, Andrea Berta's in now, that's not going to happen. And maybe that's the case. But until that's proven, people are going to feel that anxiety and that stress around the idea of bringing in a striker, because we should have done it last summer. We didn't. Okay. We got to deadline day of last summer's window and we brought in maybe the most underwhelming signing in the history of Arsenal Football Club based on expectation versus what we actually got in Raheem Sterling. Then we went to January without a striker, playing Mikel Merino up front. And again, we failed to deliver a striker. So until that striker comes in, you cannot begrudge people for feeling nervous, worried, and anxious about whether or not Arsenal are going to be able to get this deal that we need to do for a striker over the line. It doesn't mean that I agree with the kind of panic wagon and that I'm jumping on the back of it and rolling down the road, shouting and screaming about the fact that Arsenal haven't got their striker in yet. I'm not there, but I can certainly have sympathy and an understanding for that perspective and that point of view. It's not my point of view, but I get it. I get it. Anajit says, I'm still holding on until pre-season, but beyond that is simply not feasible. The winter window wounds are still fresh. Thoughts? Yeah, look, and I said it the other day. I can't remember if it was yesterday's show or the one before, where I said, ideally, you want those players in at the start of pre-season so that they can join up with the squad and they can have the maximum amount of time to settle in, understand the system, understand their teammates, get to know their teammates, understand the role, what it entails specifically at Arsenal Football Club. You want that. But if you roll a few days into preseason, I don't think that's the end of the world if it means you get the right deal and the best deal. And so, yeah, again, it's if we get to the first day of preseason and that striker's not there, I'm not going to be losing my mind. But the longer it goes on, the more nervous people get, the more panic ensues, and you can understand it. And listen, as I say, I'm a big believer in, you go by what you've seen, what you feel. You don't go by what people say their intention is solely. You go by action. And when it comes to action in the striking department, Arsenal didn't deliver last summer. In the attacking department, full stop. And they certainly didn't deliver in January. So people that are worried by that and concerned by that and still holding on to that are well within their rights to feel this way. Let's move on. Alan says, hello, guys. If Isak goes to Liverpool, Arsenal would be a big disappointment in my eyes as a club under this ownership. So for what it's worth, I agree with that. Okay. If Alexander Isak moves this summer and Arsenal weren't there and Arsenal didn't make the effort and Arsenal didn't push the boat out as far as possible to try and achieve, given all the things we've heard about how he's the dream candidate up front and all the rest of it, I will be disappointed too. And I will question the thing that I said earlier, which was that I believe at least that when Arsenal are really big on a player and really truly believe that they're a needle mover, they will go and spend the money like they did on Declan Rice. I will question that. I will reevaluate my opinion on that. I will think about that if Alexander Isak becomes available and Arsenal aren't there pushing, trying to sign him. But what I will say to that is there's a lot of outrage about the idea of Alexander Isak going to Liverpool, but it's baseless at the moment because Alexander Isak, by the looks of it, is not going anywhere. Now, there have been some reports in recent days suggesting that Alexander Isak wants out, that he wanted out at the back end of last season. And I'll be honest with you, I have heard that from somebody currently at Newcastle United. So I'm inclined to believe that Alexander Isak, on a personal level, is open to a move. But there's so much that needs to fall in place for that to happen. His contract, from what I was told, had something in it that made it easier for him to leave had Newcastle United not reached the Champions League. But they did. So they are well within their rights to demand top dollar. And I don't think anyone is going to be able to get anywhere near their valuation based on the PSR stuff and all the rest of it as well. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. Lots of people arguing with one another. Come on, guys. You don't need to argue with one another. We all want the same thing here. We all want the same thing here. Peter's dinner. Brilliant. Enjoy. I love it. I love that Greeks just pop up and talk about their food. It's just so Greek, isn't it? Brilliant. Harrison says, Harry and the rest of his YouTube clickbaiters are the reason why the market's like this. Sorry, would you not be having conversations about the Arsenal with your friends and family that also follow the Arsenal regardless? Because I would. All I'm doing is doing it with a group of people that have come to become like a family and a community on here. So, yeah, I mean, you don't get me sitting here saying that. You don't get me doing those Arsenal have agreed a deal for X player videos and really being strong and forthright on it. So, yeah, come on, man. Like there are some YouTube channels that do that stuff. Each to their own. They're well within their rights to do whatever they want. But I don't think I'm one of the guys that creates drama for no reason. I said that I am annoyed and frustrated and bored of all of this stuff. And I'm sharing my views on that also as well. People keep saying, oh, you guys do clickbait. You're on YouTube looking for content. Because for you to be baited into clicking, you are already on YouTube looking for content. So there we go. Andy says on the Chronicles of a Gooner Community, he says, we are a very dysfunctional family, although a likable bunch overall. I like that. What else have we got? I'm trying to read this comment. I'm not sure I understand it. Lots of you sticking up for me on the clickbaiting accusation. Thank you very much. Yeah, listen, I'm not in the business of trying to generate outrage for no reason. When I said, and I thought I was very clear in what I'm bored of and what I'm frustrated by, and it isn't me going, Arsenal are a disgrace and all the rest of it. I've said that. For me, it's just annoying that from 1 hour to the next, you can read two completely conflicting reports from people that are said to be well informed. And it just goes to show you that actually we don't really know, do we? What is going on behind the scenes at Arsenal Football Club. And if we have an idea, we certainly don't have any detail. And without the detail, you can easily take a walk down the wrong path. And it feels like we've done that a fair bit. And big thanks to Rumble as well. I know Rumble rumbles the chat quite a bit. He rumbles me sometimes, but he says my favorite show to tune into, to be fair. What's the point in a podcast if we all agree? Completely agree. Completely agree. Okay, I think we are going to leave it there for this edition of the pod. We'll be back later if there's anything newsworthy, not clickbait worthy, newsworthy. Yeah, maybe I'll speak to you guys later on. We'll be recording the next scouting video. That'll be out by the latest tomorrow morning. My schedule's a little bit all over the place today, so I'm not sure exactly what time I'm going to get to record it. So I don't want to promise you a time and then not deliver on that. So patrons, it will be with you by tomorrow morning, is what I'm going to say. If you want to sign up, check out the previous scouting videos. In the meantime, you can do that. Patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. The link is in the description below. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a like on the YouTube video. Can we get up to 250 likes by the time I hit end stream? Surely shouldn't be that difficult. We're not that far away. Also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review and I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, up the Arsenal. Goodbye. Enjoy.